Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Pat and Bill's Utility Lessons Learned. And I'm Bill Meehan, and right here is Pat Hohl.
Hi.
So do you remember our last episode, we talked about digital transformation. And I said that as part of digital transformation, the adoption of a concept called the digital twin was really critical, and it was very popular. This notion of digital twin is interesting. And I want to talk just a little bit about, well, what exactly is a digital twin anyway? Well, it really is two things, maybe even three. But the first is a digital kind of representation of something like an object. And I think specifically, because we're talking about utilities, a digital twin of, say, a transmission line, for example. That would be a great representation. Looking at it should look just like the transmission line, or a substation, or a generating plant, or you know, in the automobile industry, a digital twin would be a physical digital image of a car, for example. So that's really the first piece. But it's not only just an image or a picture, but it's got more detail to it, and you know, like the characteristics of the transmission line, the impedance perhaps, or the conductor type, or the material. So it's got more information that you would get just in a picture. In some ways, you could even say the digital twin might be like seeing things that you can't see with the eye, like, for example, an underground cable. That would also be perhaps a digital twin. But that's really the first piece. The second piece is it also talks about the behavior of that thing. You know, if it's a transmission line, I think, well, you could get some temperature, some wind, you know, you could put some load through it and actually see the transmission line move and sway and sag. That's really behavior of the twin. So that's kind of what a digital twin is. And that really the third thing is it also, because it's digital, it has the ability to be shared, that other people can see it. So Pat, I'm going to turn it over to you and tell us a little story about what you think about digital twins.
Well, thanks, Bill. To me, digital twins are not really new, but the new part of it is being able to make them more useful, and as you suggested, make them more connected with what we do. So when I think about digital twins, we've had digital twins in the form of CAD drawings for many, many years. It reminds me, I was on an outage one weekend. We had a large apartment complex out of service, and we needed to do some switching, some elbows and a pull box, and the pull box had been installed many years before, and it was completely overgrown with ivy. And the crew simply could not locate that pull box, and we tried everything. And I eventually had to go to the office to pull the original work order to get some dimensions from the wall and the property line, and we did eventually find it. But today, if we connected that digital information with what we were doing, it would have been much more doable to just have that information on an iPad, or to even use an augmented reality to just show you right where that thing is, to look underground and see where it is. And you came up with a nice term. I think, I'm not going to steal your thunder, but we were keeping the information private, and digital twin really allows us to share that information more effectively.
Right, yeah. Well, when you mentioned about the overgrown vegetation around this pull box, I always think of, because I worked for a utility company in the Northeast, as you did too, it's covered with snow. You can't find stuff, and you know, things, big snow banks and snow plows, and they pull all that sort of stuff. But what Pat was alluding to was a term that I think perhaps I'm going to coin it now, called a private twin. It's almost what Pat had talked about, you know, that drawing that lived somewhere else. But this is a little bit different. So when I worked for the power company, what I like to do is to drive around with different members of the crew. And what I liked specifically was to go with the troubleshooter, like especially off shift, you know, at night or something like that. And so Paul was the troubleshooter, and he also kind of liked that idea. So one day I'm driving with Paul, and I got my hard hat and my boots and everything, really cool. And I was running operations, and Paul stopped. He looked up at I think it was like a recloser or something like that on a pole, and he didn't like the way it looked. Now, a troubleshooter, for those that don't know what a troubleshooter is, they're on call 24 hours a day, different shift. They have different shifts, and so they're there just in case they see something or in case there's a problem. They're always there, and then if they need crews, they can call them crews. But anyway, so Paul said, I don't like the way that looks. And then he sort of, oh, crap, I got to do something that I really don't want to do. I have to do it. So he said, Bill, I know you're not going to like this because I frankly was the head of I was the pioneer of the GIS project. But anyway, so he went under the seat of the truck and he pulled out this big stack of prints, circuit prints, and he flipped it open to a different page. And I'm looking at this thing, and all of a sudden I see beautifully, neatly drawn red markings of different things on this print. And I was like, my God, this stuff is really valuable. What? Paul, I said, well, give this stuff over to the GIS group so they can put it into the system. Oh, no, I'm not going to give that up. It's private. It's mine. So it was a twin of the system, but it was private, and Paul had hoarded it. And it was great for Paul, but when Paul goes off shift, John or whoever comes in, or Mary, whoever comes in after Paul, they have no access to that same information. And so that's the downside of what I call a private twin. The digital twin is rich and shareable and has all kinds of information. And so Pat, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and maybe you could just wrap up this session. So a digital twin is great. A private twin, we got to get out of that business.
Well, I think the digital twin, as you suggested, is really about connecting different kinds of information and then making that more useful for users in whatever their work is, to be able to have access to those different silos of information that have been private and to apply it in their work. Great. Well, I hope everybody can join us next time because we're going to talk about the death of paper.
Yes. So join us.
We'll see you then.
See you then.